Alright, welcome to the Big 3 Racing YouTube page. Today we're going to be doing an unboxing and an install video on the new Race Products Gateway for the 99 to 04 Ford Mustang. First thing we do, we get our box in the mail. We're going to go ahead and open it. Now, in case you're wondering what the purpose of the Gateway is, it's a plug-and-play option that allows you to remove the factory ECU of a 99 to 04 Mustang and install the Holley Terminator X, Holley HP or Dominator ECU without having to worry about rewiring the whole car or losing any of your factory gauges or functions. First thing in the box is your stickers. Don't forget to put them on the car. It's important. We have our installation instructions, bubble wrap to keep everything safe, and last but not least, the actual unit itself. First thing you're going to pull out of the box is going to be the actual Gateway. This little box is where all the magic happens. This takes the CAN data that comes out of a Holley ECU, converts it over to the serial data that the gauges and the factory controls and modules and everything are looking for in the Mustang, and allows it to work, pretty much taking the place of a factory PCM. It's also a USB cable to do any updates, because this does have its own firmware and its own software to select whether it's an automatic transmission, a manual transmission, fuel system types, things like that. From there in the box is going to be the actual Gateway harness itself. A nice big Ziploc baggie. And it's pretty self-explanatory. This end goes into the factory wiring where you would unplug your factory ECU. It's got some plugs on it for the coil drivers, which is an external option for these. Also note, if you know anything about anything, you'll see that these also match to what a factory LS style sub harness is. So going to LS coils or smart coils is a super simple upgrade. All you would do is simply plug these connectors into the Holley or Jolt or any other brand extension harness that would go to smart coils, and you have a smart coil or LS coil upgrade, which is one of the Achilles heel of these engines. This end would go into the PCM underneath the seat, and our wideband connector, our CAN connector, our auxiliary input, and then last but not least, this will plug in, and you'll see it in the later install video. So it's pretty simple. The hardest part of this whole process is just running some wires and pulling your passenger seat out to get it there, which we'll go over in our install video. That plugs in like so. Alright, so that's everything that comes in the box. Instructions could also be downloaded off Race's website if there's any updates or anything better. There's also a big giant sign here that this product is for off-road use only and not to be used on public roads or highways. The nice thing about this system is you could go back and forth, meaning you could keep your car 100% emissions controlled, drive it to the track, swap it out to your race computer, and get to racing. So aside from that is the controls for that. Now, other options that you have going with Holley is we have optional flex fuel kits. So you could actually add a GM style flex fuel sensor. We have a plug and play harness for that allows you to have true flex fuel tuning. The factory oil pressure gauge is only a go or no go, which means it's just in the middle if it has oil pressure, if it doesn't have oil pressure. If we want a data log, set up a safety, or just see oil pressure, we have an optional oil pressure add-on to it, which is a little harness here that's a plug and play deal, makes it super simple, along with the 100 PSI sensor. For your turbo guys, we also have boost control kits, so if you control boost. And then we also have an optional fuel pressure, oil pressure, any other type of sensors. Aside from the Gateway, you're going to need a couple other components. I find it easier just to buy the complete kit and then sell what you don't need after the fact, because when you piece and part it together, it ends up being roughly the same price than it would if you just bought the kit. Now, all the components that are in here, you could use pretty much any mod motor kit. You could also use a Gen 3 Hemi kit or anything that has the injector drivers built into it. A Coyote kit you could use. It doesn't really matter because we're not using the main harness, we're just using everything else in it. So out of the kit comes with, the Terminator X kit's going to come with a main harness. We don't need to use this anymore. This does have value if you go to sell it. This is retail, probably a $500 or $600 harness, so you could easily sell and get some of your money back. What we are going to need out of it, also another thing I guess we're not going to need is the injector harness, again, or the coil harness that comes in this kit. So these all have value. If you look up the part numbers on Holley's website, each of those are $100 to $150 a piece for those harnesses. We don't need those. However, what we do need is the main power harness for the battery for the ECU. We need the actual ECU, which is a Terminator X. If you're running a manual transmission, you only need a standard Terminator X. If you're running an automatic transmission, you need a Terminator X Max or a Holley Dominator ECU. The manual transmission can work with either a HP or a Terminator X. If we're trying to be the most cost-effective way, we're going to use Terminator X. It comes with the Bosch O2 sensor and the adapter that you're going to need to plug it in. It comes with the input-output harness. This is where you're going to wire your oil pressure or your flex fuel or your boost control into. Also comes with the handy-dandy 3.5-inch screen. These are $379 to buy now, so it's probably worth it getting the kit because you get the screen. This is what's used for data logging. Also gives you an eye to what's going on inside the ECU. Fuel pressure, air-fuel ratio, RPM, anything that the ECU is seeing you could see on here. So it's also like a little gauge cluster for you on top of everything. And then on another top of that also comes with the coil drivers. So if you're running factory coils, you're going to need this. A couple other cool things that you're going to need is an O2 bung to weld in for your O2 sensor, and some more stickers to make everything fun. So I find it easier just to buy the kit and then sell what you don't need. This stuff does sell, and it'll actually end up saving you some money in the long run. If not, you could buy the ECU separate, you could buy the harness separate, you could buy this separate, you could buy that set, you could buy all this stuff separately. It ends up being about the same price. A couple things to note: if you have an 03 or 04 Cobra, there's an IAT2 sensor, and we would like to reference that for air intake temp into the Holley. So if you take your connector, you'll see that there is an orange wire kind of taped back into the harness. We're just going to untape that or just pull it out here. That is our IAT2 connector. We need to switch the pin, which it says in the instructions on under 2. For 03, 04 Cobra, you'll have to swap the pins in the J1A, which is what this is, pin 11. So you simply just locate the numbers on the back for pin 11, which is... that is pin 9, that's pin 10, it is this one right here, kind of a little butt to get to. Sometimes you might have to cut back the insulation to do so. They got it real nice and tight and good. And again, this is only for 03, 04 Cobras. We're gonna go ahead and unpin it. You little white clip here, you unpin that, they pop up. We're gonna pull the wire just straight out. So we're gonna find pin 11, there's pin 10. The black wire in this case. We're going to pull it out. Be careful not to pull all the other wires out at the same time. And then we're going to stick the orange wire in there. When purchasing, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, if you just let me know, we could do it for you. Takes a little bit of maneuvering to get it in, and then you just simply close these connectors up, and we are good to go. As it comes from the gateway, there's no oil pressure input into the Holley. There's only going into the dash, which is just a go or no go gauge. If you want to log oil pressure through the Holley and then also see it on your 3.5-inch screen or in your data logs, you need to purchase the additional add-on. This is a pretty simple, mostly plug-and-play harness that plugs into the power tap harness and then gets one pin that would go into the oil pressure connector on the Holley side of the harness. To find that, you just go near where the kick panel is, where the factory ECU plug is. There's a spot that says tap. You plug it in. If you have other things that plug into your power tap, like the flex fuel harness, that's optional. Or if you want to add boost control or any other sensors, this is just a pass-through, so you still don't lose your connector. You have another one to go to add to it. You're just going to add it to the harness. This end is going to go to a standard 100 psi style Holley harness or Holley sensor. You get them from Low Dollar, Motion, Amazon, whichever one you want to use, but it's just a standard 3-pin connector for 100 psi, 200 psi pressure sensor. This you're going to run out into the car. There is extensions if you need to extend it, or you would run the oil line to it. However it is, you got to use your imagination, but it gives you a spot to plug it in. Do something like this. This will go out and you run it through the car. We're going to find our pin A20, which is that same connector for an 03, 04 Cobra here. Pin 20 is going to be empty on it, so we're going to find pin 20. And they're clearly marked on the other side. So there is pin 18 is there. You can see it's kind of a little tough, but again, if you don't feel comfortable with this when you go to buy it, let us know. We could add this for you. There's a little plug in there. We got to get that plug out. Use a little pocket screwdriver, pair of pliers, whatever. Just get that little plug out. That plug is to keep moisture out of any open ports. So there it's gone, and we're going to take our purple wire, that comes with that harness. Stick it in there. Again, you hear it click. Close the little connector. Take a little bit of fiddling with sometimes. Make sure you don't pull any other wires out. And then it goes right back in place. Then what you would do to clean this up on your install is probably zip tie it to the harness. However you like to do it. But this just goes there. I'm going to zip tie it here. Once we get in the car, I'll clean it all up, make it look real nice. And now we've added oil pressure to her. So now the Holley ECU will see the oil pressure. You can set up safeties off of it or just plain data log. Now comes time to programming the gateway. You want to go to Race Products, USA. You're going to go to Downloads. And then you're going to select the Gateway Windows Installer. I already downloaded it, so I'm not going to do it again, but there's where you would click and download it. From there, it puts an icon, the Race icon on your desktop. You simply click on it, and it's going to look for a COM port. So we have the box already plugged in through the USB, and the cable is provided. We're going to select the make and model. There's a couple different makes and models. We have a 99-04 Mustang. We're going to select whether it's an automatic or manual transmission. This one is a manual transmission. But also, if you want to adjust your coolant temp, or if your speedo is a little off, this is where you would adjust it. The coolant temp should be fine. The sweep is just a pretty much normal temperatures in the middle. But if you like it to read a little lower, a little higher, you could do it here. But other than that, that's it. We just select 9904, what transmission it has, and if you want to adjust your coolant temp, sweep on your gauge, you can. I haven't saw a need to do that yet. So that's it. And you just go to update. It sends the values to the box, and that's it. The subject that we're using is a 2003 Ford Mustang Cobra. It's heavily modified, but it does run fine on the factory ECU right now. Some of the factory limitations that we ran into is injector sizing limits, and just really getting good drivability with a big giant MAF, big injectors, and having the control that we were looking for. So this is a perfect example of why you would want to go to aftermarket fuel injection, how it makes it easy. We are going to start off with unhooking the positive battery cable. We're pulling off the instructions here. And the battery is not in the front on this car, it's actually relocated. If your battery was in the front, you would unhook it in the front, but since it's not, it's in the rear. Let's go to the rear and unhook it. Next, remove the passenger seat and the passenger side kick panel to get to the factory ECU and connector. I didn't have time to do that yesterday. You pull out and move the truck. Why? We're going to remove the factory ECU and get it unplugged and get it out of there. Now we're going to plug the Gateway big female connector into the factory engine harness. We're then going to run the Gateway harness underneath the carpet using a sharp razor blade. We're going to cut a slit right before the seat goes under the brackets, and we're going to put our ECU there. Next, with a sharp knife, X-Acto knife or razor blade, cut a slit in the carpet right between the two seat bolts like shown. And that is where we're going to slip the harness through, underneath the carpet. Now you will see the ECU connector, the wideband connector, and the CAN harness is through the slit in the carpet, and all the other connectors are located in the kick panel. Also plug in your 554-122 coil drivers. Note that the gateway harness is noted that it is 1234, goes to the 1234 connector, and the 5678 goes to the 5678 connector. There's a white and black, white goes to white, black goes to black, making sure that the coil drivers on the white and the black share the same numbers. After you get those plugged in, you're going to want to spend some time with some zip ties, cleaning this all up and organizing it. Most of this you have to use your imagination, but it all does fit in there and does look neat. Now that we've got the coil drivers plugged in and the harness ran and neatened up into the kick panel, it's time to run the map sensor and plug it in. Now you'll notice that we use a stainless steel style map sensor. The kit actually comes with a GM style connector for a 1, 2, or 3 bar. This particular car is going to really party and may make over 30 pounds of boost, so we opted for a 4-bar map sensor. Adapters can be sold to connect at different types of map sensors, or you could just cut the connector and wire in your own pigtail, however you see fit. Next, we're going to run the vacuum line to a good vacuum source to the car. Next, run the vacuum line into the engine bay. You could use your imagination however you see fit on doing that. On this particular car, we went through the center console and the shifter boot. You must find a very solid, good vacuum port. If it's a supercharged car, you need to make sure it's after the supercharger, not before the supercharger. For ease of use, without pulling off the supercharger to get to the port, we found a nice line that goes to the fuel pressure regulator that supplies vacuum. We teed it in and made nice solid connections. This is probably the most important sensor of this thing, so make sure that they do not blow off and it's a good connection. Next, we're going to run the O2 sensor wire. Again, you could use whatever imagination you have to run it. We chose to go through the center console, and a nice spot is to drop it down by the shifter boot. Alright, now that we got the O2 connection ran through the shifter boot, we're going to use zip ties. They're our friend in these situations. A zip tie and tie that up so it doesn't wrap itself around the drive shaft or get hurt. Now this car already has 2 factory O2 sensors. We could either take one out and screw our O2 sensor in, or if you're going to switch back and forth from factory, which is what we recommend doing so you can drive it on the road, emissions legal, you'll drill a hole and have an O2 bung welded in. You can buy O2 bungs at any local parts store or any supply house. Now, if you keep in mind, if you've got a Terminator X, you must use the Holley adapter to use the Bosch 4.9 sensor. You're simply going to plug it in here. O2 sensor plugs into that, and then you would place your O2 sensor in, tying it all up. Since this kit is meant to work on a variety of different combos, there's obviously a lot of extra length. Just loop that up and tie it up. You do not want to cut or try and shorten this because it is a shielded wire that is sensitive to resistance. So just loop it and tie it and do a neat job at it. One of the last things you have to do is run your power harness for the Holley. It's very important that the Holley ECU sees a direct connection to the battery. Now, this particular car is heavily modified, so the battery's in the trunk. Factory, they're up front. So it's up to you to figure out how and where you're going to run it. But it's very important that the positive goes to the positive side of the battery and the negative goes to the negative side of the battery. Not a cutoff switch, not a seat bolt, not a chassis ground, but these 2 connections go directly to the battery. Also, you want to make sure it's fused. So if you make your own harness, that's fine. These connections are easy to find. If you buy the Holley harness or the one that comes in the kit, it comes pre-fused. Comes with the fuse in it, but make sure it's fused, because if not, if one of these wires get pinched, it melts everything down. Now it's time that we've all been waiting for. We're going to plug this sucker in. Since this is a manual trans car, we opted for the Terminator X standard, which does not have trans control. Now that we have all the wires ran, we're simply just going to plug them all in. There's your power harness. Our J1A connector. And our J2B connector. Now you'll notice there's one connector left hanging. That is for optional automatic transmission cars. So if the car had a 4R70W, or if you did a 4R70 swap, that's where the transmission harness would plug into. Now we have our race products gateway. This is the magic behind the whole thing. That is the interface that runs all your factory gauges and factory functions. We're simply just going to plug that in as well. Now you could use the optional Holley seat bracket. We opted not to. The carpet's actually very thick, so we just simply use a couple sheet metal screws to hold it down to the carpet itself and put the seat on, and everything floats real nice. We have the optional 3.5-inch Holley handheld. There's also a CAN bus cable for doing custom tuning, and you could get a splitter to have both run at the same time. Keep in mind and also note, if ever doing a firmware update on the ECU, you must unplug the race products gateway in order to do any type of firmware updates. Nothing else could be on the CAN network when doing firmware updates. We got it done on the chassis dyno. Only thing we got left to do is to put the seat back in, a couple panels back in, secure everything, but we always do that after we tune. As you'll see, all the factory gauges work like stock. All our gauges work. Our fuel gauge, our coolant temp, our factory boost gauge, as well as the oil pressure and tach. As we have our optional screens also. Since if you're using a Terminator X, all the data logging is done through the 3.5-inch screen, so I recommend picking one up. You could also buy the new 5-inch screen, which also give you a GPS speed if you like. Both do data logging. Both you can save tunes, multiple tune files to, and load and write to them. I would strongly recommend them. Companies make nice little mounts to put them, but it's pretty key to have this. After that, your install's done. You're ready to go tear up the street.